Welcome to Our Next Existence by Katie and the Chorus. I'm Katie, former technology strategist turned reluctant spiritual medium, and I channel messages from the Chorus, a group of beings just beyond our sensory perceptions who are loving, expansive, and who greatly enjoy sharing their perspective of us. Join us each week as we share and discuss their ideas about humanity's existence, purpose, and future. Concepts you can draw from to accelerate your path, expand your perceptions, and ultimately step into the flow of the universe and your life. Welcome back, everybody. Well, would you look at this? We made it to season 3. In the first season, some of you may remember that I would channel the chorus, think about what they said, really belabor it for several days, record my discussion portion, and then after all was said and done, go back and record the introduction. I found this energetic experience very interesting because I realized the way that I talked about the topic was very integrated, was different. By the time I recorded the introduction to the episode, because of everything that came later in the episode. And I felt that this had a sort of smoothing effect for any listener who was new to the chorus, is that they heard the integrated energy first in the episode, then sort of got introduced to the chorus, which came from a much earlier point in time, and then heard the discussion. In season 2, this sort of became more free-flowing, where it was very linear, coincidentally, since the topic was about linear time, where I would record the introduction, record the channeled message from the chorus, and then record the discussion in a line, 1, 2, 3. And I thought this was also very interesting because then the energy was moving through the process. The listener would move through the process with me. Well, I hadn't really thought about what season 3 would be like. It did occur to me that the chorus and other beings might pop in and that things might move around a little bit. Well, I sat down a couple days ago and recorded a kickoff like I did for season 2, and then I recorded the chorus like I did for season 2, and then I recorded a discussion like I did in season 2. And then a portion of my audio mysteriously vanished. I could still see in the software the little squares where the audio had been, still there, still edited, just somewhere else in the universe. And so I had to re-record. I'm tempted to just make you all guess, because that's always kind of fun to see what you can sense in each of these episodes. But I think there are going to be many opportunities for that in this season. So I'll just say this. The chorus section disappeared. They were there when I started to record this episode and made this whole discussion, and then their audio went away. And I was called back to channel again, but they wanted me to do it in a new way. They wanted me to do it with my perspective more present in their channeled message. And would you believe that triggered all sorts of shame and self-doubt that, as usual, we don't even know is in there until we get brought up to that next level of showing ourselves, showing the world who we are, but showing up for us individually. I have had moments in these past several years channeling the chorus where I let my human guard down, you could say, where I sort of just so happy and so enjoying what they're saying that I sort of just don't really care as much about the things that I'm usually worried about. I'm just so happy. And I have found in those moments that I embody myself differently. I mean, I think I'm still Katie, but there's more than the personality that I've always known or been here on this planet, in this time, in this conscious perspective. And so even though it was extremely sublime when it happened, it was just sort of incredible and freeing. It's like I got let out of the box a little bit. It was also terrifying when I returned to the box because it brought up a lot of new questions about what the heck the box actually is. And if I'm so much more than what this personality has been, well, what does that mean for every single one of my relationships? Who's the person, the friend, the family member that these people know and love if when I step out of the box, it's different? I mean, sure, we all like the idea of as we ascend, we get bigger and broader, and then suddenly we're these glowing, amazing beings, but you're also no longer what you solely identified with. It is, as usual, multiple perspectives. There is a change, perhaps even a loss of something, and there's also a big old expansion. So when I went back to channel the chorus the second time, after they not so mysteriously bowed out of the audio recording, they encouraged me to channel with them. To not just be the channel, right? Just bring through their words, which you're kind of always filtering that energy through your expression and creation. We kind of all know that, right? But rather than just allowing for that possibility, they wanted me to allow all of me in the channeling process. And so I started to cry, as humans do when we're releasing beliefs. Big old wave of grief. And I don't know that I did it successfully. You can be the judge. But then I kind of understood that inkling that I had about, I think these voices are going to kind of come and go and move around a little bit in a new way. From the five senses standpoint, as we each move into those frequencies a little more, I get it a little differently, how it might look like we're just merging into something. Because the five senses can't expand into that level of nuance and different. If you're looking at me as Katie, the gal with these funky quirks who dresses in this way and who tends to do these kinds of things or tuck her hair behind her ear in this particular way or whatever that is, and those things change, and you can't sense the other things that are expressing those aspects of myself in new ways, it might look like I am less of who I was. But if you're energetically connected and you hear an episode like this and are feeling all sorts of different energies as I'm talking and realizing where I am present and where other beings are present in the recording, even if my voice changes, even if the five senses version of Katie is less present, you'd still sense me there, wouldn't you? It's like trying to fit a bunch of different energies through the bottom of a pin. There's only so much space in the five senses. Distance is an aspect of limitation here, which we're going to be talking a lot about this season. And it's everywhere. And so if there's only so much space at the bottom of the pinhole, it might look like a switch, right? I start talking differently or being less Katie. Well, someone must have taken up that space. That being must have taken up that space. The chorus comes in. This is the part of the podcast where the chorus talks. But if you sense more beyond the tip of that pin, then you know I'm still there. And in fact, you might even sense both me and the chorus more expansively and understand us both more broadly than ever before. So weirdly or not, we're kicking off this season in the reverse. First, I recorded the discussion at the end of a channeled message that got deleted, and then I just re-recorded, and now I am recording the kickoff after the rest of the episode has already happened, and yet I am currently trying to process the energy of what has just come through. It is all moving around in all different directions. And direction is exactly what you're going to hear about right now. In the first part of the episode, which was actually the second part of the episode, you'll hear directly from the chorus themselves, and then afterwards, meaning before all of this happened, we will discuss. Enjoy the ride. Dearest lights of our hearts, friends, companions, in this most incredible experience of creation and of the infinite, we adore you. What a strange sensation it must be to feel that kind of adoration, authentically, joyously poured over you all, in a world, in a realm, in a time where there is perhaps not much that feels adored. What is the difference between a place that is full of life and full of love, and one that is perceived to be dark and distraught? An infinitely valid perspective would be that one has an abundance of light and one has an extreme lack of it. And we honor this perspective. Another equally valid view in all of infinite creation would be that the light is being used in very different ways, is being interpreted in different ways, molded, experienced, wielded very differently. And you might say, well then, there are some who wield the light for dark purposes, and some who wield the light for positive ones. And we would not disagree with this perspective at all. And also it could be said that for each moment that you arrive, that you exist, that you are present, that you are conscious in your own perspective, in choosing to see what is worthy of adoration about yourself. You are in fact choosing how you wield the light that has been given to you by all of creation. Do you feel it dawning within you, dear ones? The ideas, the realizations that it is not binary, that nothing in creation is technically opposite. There are, and have always been, and will always be, many perspectives that move and bend and dance and change and evolve and swirl and create patterns the likes of which the five senses mind has barely been allowed to dream of. Beloved ones, you each are expressions of infinite creation, unlimited power, and existence is yours. When this pours into your hearts, it communes with you, it meets you, and you transform it into creation itself. You are each the birthplace of creation. You are each creators, gods, that which bring about the expansion of the universe. For each time the light flows through your heart and out from you in glorious desires, inspirations, intuitions, passions, curiosities, wonders. You give birth to the light here in your reality. There are none who exist who are not connected to this infinite flow. And though their hearts might translate this energy very differently than you would, you are not in opposition. You are perhaps moving expansively in vastly different directions. So what then, you say? What do we do when we come up against something that we wish to smite down, that we wish to overcome, that we feel a need within us to break apart and remove? Is that the dark or the light within us? And we would say, beloved ones, that each of those things is a different color, a different flavor, a different version, a different creation, pouring out of you and into this universe, including the experience of judgment in that present moment, which wishes to restrain your expression of any of these things for the experience of being restrained. And as you come to deeper, vaster, and more loving places, for every desire which you feel that is fueled by the energy that is freely given to your heart, you will find that you radiate an explosion of light and possibility that is far beyond good or bad, darkness or brightness. For it is the pure radiance of loving creation that is underneath all aspects of creation. We are here with you, dear ones, connected infinitely to your hearts, to the flow of this energy that comes to us all, radiantly adoring every step you take in this grand awakening and loving you infinitely. you hear that? Course was like, before we even start to talk about distance, you all need to talk about your sense of direction. Raise your hand if you have a great sense of direction. I think I would put myself in that category, but sometimes I think it's just because of who I had around me in my life to compare myself to. I thought I had a great sense of direction because I was always around people who had none. And I think, having zero sense of direction, I'm not really sure where that comes from, except my close friends who just never know where in physical space that they are seem to just fill up that mental space with something else. It's not like it's a blank. It's like they're doing something else instead of figuring out where they are. And they do ultimately get there. I have sat back and watched some of my close friends get themselves lost. And I don't say anything. I just wait to see what would happen. Like, I know we just took a wrong turn, and then I know we took another wrong turn, and now we're driving like a mile in the wrong direction. And I'm not going to say anything because I just want to see what happens. And then about a mile down the road, they're like, oh, wait, how did we get here? This isn't the right intersection. And they do correct. And then, we turn around and then eventually they get their way back. And sometimes they get distracted again. But then ultimately they do make it back to their driveway, I have discovered. So is that really a bad sense of direction? Or is that just lengthy circumnavigation? Is it about time? It just took them longer, maybe, than other people. And then the people with the good sense of direction, what is it about them where they very quickly recognize that they are off the most efficient path? We could all sum this up into a time question, couldn't we? A person with a good sense of direction says, oh, wait, no, let's go here. They catch it. And maybe the person with the bad sense of direction might not. But given that this is a season on distance, do we really think a sense of direction is only about time? What else might be happening? In the very early years of channeling the chorus, I was pretty stressed. As those of you know from listening to season 1 and 2, I was very sick. I was trying to hold down a part-time job. I had a new baby. And I was trying to figure out this channeling thing that was happening to me that seemed pretty legit. But I didn't know what to make of it, and I didn't know how to talk about it. So some nights, rather than going and channeling more, if I was kind of saturated and I couldn't really handle anything else from the chorus, I went and I found these meditations, and I can't totally remember the name of the group, but they were lovely. They were channeled messages. So I kind of felt like, okay, I'm like feeling out somebody else's channeled work. It had lovely music to it. It was very calming. In fact, oftentimes I would fall asleep by the end of the meditation. And one thing being quasi new to it that I always found interesting was that the meditations often had me go up in direction. So I was supposed to come into my light body and move upwards into, I think, higher and finer wavelengths of light. So there was this expansiveness going up, up, up. And the wavelengths of light got like finer and brighter and whiter, like whiter than anything you would ever imagined, or more clear, or, whatever word you like. And sometimes I would come back, quote unquote, back from a meditation like that, and I would feel so blissed out. Like I didn't even feel my body on the couch blissed out. Which is probably why I often dozed right off to sleep afterwards. But for the times that I didn't, sometimes I would go upstairs and do a meditation and then say, okay, and then I'll wrap up the evening. I'll come back downstairs and take out the trash or whatever it was. And so after doing a meditation like that, where I had just been up somewhere in some amazing, light, bright, effervescent, out of body sort of experience in my meditation, when I came back downstairs, it was like how do I take out the trash? Took a minute to come back into my body. And, sometimes it was like not a pleasant experience too, because I had just been like floating on clouds of light in some other dimension. And now I was bagging up the week's worth of rotting fruit or whatever was in the trash can. And so I found that I had to really consider when and where I was going to do a meditation. Because I started to realize that I was sort of hampered or handicapped a little bit in my physical reality afterwards. Like if you're in the middle of a super deep meditation like that, and then like your kid bursts into the room, it's brutal, right? It's brutal in a way that like those interruptions, going back to book 2, are not brutal in the same way if you're already kind of in your body. Right? Your kid running into the room while you're vacuuming the floor is very different than your kid running into the room while you are on some other parallel dimension riding a cloud of sunshine and rainbows. And I found this interesting because I thought, well, I like the feel of meditation, but I don't love the reentry. Similar to probably how I have described that sort of back and forth with the chorus in the early years was going out to their expansive love and then coming back to a traffic jam was brutal. The extreme contrast between their perspective and ours here was intense. It was an intense bridge to hold. But ultimately, when I integrated the experiences that I had with the chorus, I felt strengthened, or I might even say emboldened, into my perspective here on this earth. But with meditation, or at least the kinds of guided meditations that I was doing, let's say, the jury was still out for me. I didn't totally feel that same sense of integration of those experiences into my life. Ultimately, I started gravitating away from doing those sorts of things in my free time. I heard the good advice through many of these ups and downs over the years of doing something to relax and doing something to guide myself into that more at ease state. And I do think it held aspects of that. I did feel a release of some of the mental churning that I was definitely doing, especially in those early years of channeling. But there still seemed to be a final distance that never closed for me between those meditative experiences and my day-to-day life that I still had to sort of like hop, skip, or jump over to get back into my waking, thinking, human perspective, where I drive a blue truck instead of a cloud of light. As I continued on my spiritual path and continued to meet people who had had very different experiences of meditation, psychedelics, all sorts of methodologies that we currently have in our reality to experience other frequencies, we might say, to experience maybe vaster planes of spiritual connection. One of the phrases that I heard over and over again was to ground myself. Now, particularly as I started to talk more openly with people I met about my channeling, when I expressed to them that I was having a hard time with some new wave of something that was coming through, I would often hear this phrase, don't forget to ground yourself. It was kind of interesting because in the early years, I'd have to look it up over and over again because I kept forgetting what grounding was. I feel like, oh yeah, that's important. How do I ground again? And I remember spending like many months really confused about what it actually was because every time I asked somebody else what is grounding, I would kind of get a different answer. Now, on the average, after having asked many, many people what is grounding to you, it seemed to be some sort of way of coming back into your body, or what some people would express as a release of maybe an energetic buildup in your system into the earth, literally, specifically. Whether through a meditative kind of experience where you visualize that energy coming out of you into the earth itself, or through a physical sort of experience like taking a bath, getting into water, getting under a heavy blanket, putting your bare feet onto the grass or the sand. Now, in contrast to the guided meditation where I went up, 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 I found this very fascinating because this seemed to be down, 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 down. I needed to get down into my body. I needed to feel the dirt on my feet. And yet at the same time, even though it appealed to me mentally and I would say to my heart, I still found myself like not really ever taking off my shoes and going barefoot in the grass. Has anyone ever given you that advice? And you're like, yeah, it sounds amazing. And then it's not until a month later that you run back into that person again. And they're like, yeah, did you go barefoot in the grass every morning? And you're like, oh, nope, didn't do that. It sounded good. I really liked the idea of it. And yet I still couldn't quite do it. Sometimes I did get into a habit of drawing baths, but I think it was mostly just because I liked baths. And so I wasn't actually thinking about grounding myself. I was just like, I love hot water. And before I knew it, that sounded like the best thing to do that evening. Now, those who are perhaps expert grounders would probably say, Katie, but that's it. Like your body was telling you what it needed and you listened and you drew a bath. Well, if you listen to what the chorus said today in sort of summarizing season 2 and time and moving into distance, they made that point exactly. They were saying, well, yes, as you release beliefs about time, you step into more of a present moment presence where you actually do perceive more and different frequencies, some of which will be what they call desire. Desire, according to the first book, is a sense of where you are going. You are so practically right on top of it that you have this thing that we call a desire. We say, I want. I want is a reflection of an energetic proximity. Prior to being that close to that manifestation, it might feel like an inkling. It might feel like a thought that comes and goes. It might feel like something that just pops into your head on a drive home. It's not as substantive as I want the thing and I'm grabbing my car keys and my wallet right now. That action, that manifestation, has moved so close to us that we perceive it as a desire. And the chorus says, well, yeah, actually, as you become less concerned about what time it is as you're grabbing your keys and your wallet, you will feel a stronger connection to the desire or the impending manifestation itself. So maybe early on in my spiritual awakening, I'd be like, is the story even still open, right? The logistics, the judgment, the planning, the efficiency, all those aspects of a thinking mind come into play. And oftentimes they do their job, historically, which was to limit our connection to those manifestations, particularly in a new and expansive way. So we might diminish the desire. We might be like, oh, I have that ice cream in the freezer. I'll just eat that, right? We might find another way that gets us to what we believe the manifestation would have been. Now, if you've been listening to the course for a while, you and I both know that maybe the idea to run out to the store and get ice cream was the desire that got us out the door. But who knows what's going to happen when we get to the grocery store? And again, this is another loosening aspect of time. As we head out the door in a mental projection, which is a big aspect of our linearity, if the mental projection of getting that particular ice cream is very strong in our resonance, is very strong in our presence, we will hardly perceive anything else as we drive to the store, walk in the store, walk to the aisle where the ice cream is, because we have probably already mapped out the walk to that aisle in our heads as we were driving to the store. So there we are not actually present in the drive to the store. We are in our mental projection. And then once we get to the store, probably also very aware of the clock and how much time is left before the store closes or before we need to get to bed because we have work the next day. And oh yeah, don't forget that email. You see, The brain is already calculating how to fit in this spontaneous event. The more we relax our aspects of linearity and linear time, the less this would happen through the action itself. So as we drive to the store, we are completely at ease about taking a totally spontaneous trip to the store late at night for ice cream. We are not trying to use it to avoid something, that we're trying to not think about it. We are not up in our heads as much, churning on how this is going to be okay and it's going to work out. It's more of a blank, we might say, coming from a mental perspective. It's more of an attentive, present moment presence, the chorus might say, where there is so much more in the present moment that is happening in our car, around our car, as we're driving to the store. And we're much more likely to perceive those things in that state, in that greater state of timelessness, as we take on a spontaneous action instigated by a clear sense of desire that we felt because of our ability to be present. As we move along the spiritual path or the awakening path, this might align more closely to what we consider to be grounded. Grounded being a sense of your own body's, if we were to be specific physically, a sense of your own body's sensations and desires and needs. Like when mine was like, I really want to get in hot water right now. My ability to be present with that desire afforded me the opportunity to go and draw a hot bath, as opposed to, as we often do in our experience of limitation, not even really hear the desire in the early days. We may have no awareness of our own desires when we are completely aligned to limitation, because that was the goal of limitation, was to sort of thwart or block our view of these vaster energies and what they connect us to. So in the early days, I would have no idea that I wanted a bath, not even a concept that had occurred to me and been wanted. And then I might come to a phase where I recognize the desire that, yeah, I wanted a bath, but maybe I'll do that this weekend. And then time, as we talked about in season 2, becomes the distance between us and our desires. We kick it down the road. There's too much in my mental projection for what I need to accomplish tonight or what needs to happen in the succeeding days for me to fit in a bath. And this feels so real and so palpable to us that if someone were even able to resonate into that perspective that I had and suggest, you have time for a bath, I might actually even get angry by the suggestion, anger being a friction that we feel between the beliefs of limitation that we are awakening to and the vaster aspects of what we are, which might be sending us this desire. It might look something like, I can't take a bath right now. Do you see how much is left to do? And I have to get up early for that meeting and blah, blah, blah. And come to think of it, you don't see me or appreciate me either. As anger tends to do. The more we double down on the limitation, the more the friction increases. Until such time as we awaken to the beliefs of that particular aspect of powerlessness that were holding us back. And after we have the outburst or the 5 hard days until we finally get to the bath, we might come around to the question of, why did I wait so long? Which is the culmination of all the belief changing and rewriting and loophole finding that had been occurring through the previous days by way of this experience. As the chorus often says, you are doing it by going through it. The energetic perception, that is our emotions, is your evidence that you are doing the things in those frequencies. If you were not angry, you would not have been in an energetic place of friction where you were feeling the expansive energies and plugging them in to those aspects of limitation. In some ways, we often say the greater the doubt, the greater the awakening, but you could also say just the greater emotion, the greater awakening. Emotion is our energetic read of things. It is an expression of how humans experience energy. Now, for those who are listening to this, you probably have experiences growing up, and particularly in childhood, of perhaps being the kid who felt things. Maybe you were more quote unquote sensitive. Maybe you flipped your lid a little more than others. Maybe you cried more often. Maybe you were seemingly more hurt by the words of others than other peers your age seemed to be. I think there are many people who identify with the term starseed who feel that they are and have been very different to what has gone on here, and may typically classify themselves as ones who felt like outsiders but also felt more than the insiders. They had more meta-level concepts, more questions about why it all worked this way, senses of confusion by why people would treat each other in this manner, deep compassion for others that they perhaps hardly knew. And in a nutshell, the chorus would agree. The chorus would say, by their definition, that emotion is energetic perception, and those of us who show great capacity for or range of emotion are more likely demonstrating their ability for energetic perception. The problem comes up for us in a society which dismisses so many of those things in order to stick to a mental projection. So in not feeling the urge to go get the ice cream at the store that night, another person will simply move into the next thing to do, the next obligation, the next sitting on the couch maybe and doing nothing. It is often likely to be a movement into a series of actions in which demonstrably very little is felt or reflected upon. And this would be true based on our objectives for limitation. In not feeling the desire, we are and have been achieving a disconnection or a seeming disconnection from our energetic aspects, which typically inform us of these vaster energies. So one way of saying it, among an infinite number of ways of saying it, is that those who are more awake, those who are more aware of all of their emotions, could also be viewed as those who are more in their bodies. They are feeling much more with their physical instrument than those who are what we might say asleep or not expanding or living it up in limitation, who do not perceive these sensations of desire, intuition, or inspiration. They may be having those sensations because we are all equally capable of having energetic connection and perception. But based on what they believe, particularly in this instance, as we're discussing linear time, they are so caught up in their mental projection as to be completely unaware of what their body, what their sensations are telling them moment by moment. Our contractor for our renovation had two assistant guys, maybe I'll say. When my contractor couldn't reach us, he would send out these two gentlemen to do the odd jobs or finish the thing or drop something off. They were both potentially in their early 70s, had clearly been doing this for a long time, and were often rather grouchy. In fact, one of them liked to mutter under his breath as he did things all around the house. And often I could hear him arguing with whatever screw or nail or tool or darkness he was currently struggling with. The other, however, was rather quiet. He would do his job, do his things, and sometimes he would defend himself if he got blamed for something going wrong by the more grouchy assistant. But other than that, he was relatively silent in his work. As I watched them go about the job in my house over several months, I was often sort of amazed at how much they had numbed about their physical bodies. Perhaps having had a lifetime of physical work and experiencing all sorts of pain in a day-to-day basis, it's easier to dismiss every bump and smash and prick and scratch, because who would have time in a five senses perspective to face all that each and every day? It would really slow you down from getting the job done. One time I was helping them hold something while they were trying to put in the window, I think it was. And the mutterer was getting very angry with the window while the silent one was very calmly holding the window. And the mutterer took his hammer to kind of hammer the window into place. And as I cringed seeing a hammer near the brand new window that had just finally been delivered, he missed his swing and smashed his thumb. He cursed, he threw the hammer on the ground, and then he proceeded continuing to push the window, and the window went into place. It was like these nubs that belonged on the window itself. He was trying to get this screw cover thing. Anyways, about a minute later, I noticed that his thumb was bleeding, and he didn't. And I said, "Hey, your thumb's bleeding. Do you want me to get a Band-Aid?" And he muttered some more, and he wiped it on his jeans, and he walked away. There weren't too many examples of this, but I think ultimately I decided to just help them whether or not they would say yes to it. So if I saw his thumb was bleeding, I would go and get him a Band-Aid and hand it to him, to which he would say, "Oh, thanks." And he put on the Band-Aid. Or if I heard them in the bathroom sort of struggling with the dim light, I would go into the garage and I would get an extra lantern and I would plug it in and bring it in and shine it on the tile, which they would say, "Oh, thanks." Never once did I see them really help themselves through their own pain and struggles in whatever it was that they were working on. And yet every time I showed up with the thing that would help them, they did actually receive it. It was the end of the renovation, and the contractor was here and he was finalizing a few very small things. And he had his two assistants with him, and he was outside at the truck with the mutterer. And the quiet one was in the kitchen, and I didn't realize it. And I walked into the kitchen, and there he was standing there, just taking it all in. This kitchen that over 6 painful months of nonstop surprises and delays that he had built with the other two gentlemen predominantly, he was standing there and looking at it as though he was seeing it for the first time. And he turned and he looked at me and said perhaps the fourth or fifth thing I had ever heard him say in 6 months of this man being in my own home. And he said, "Looks real nice." I said, "Thank you. I think so too." He nodded and he kept looking at the kitchen. And then, without really being able to make eye contact with me, but kind of looking in my direction more than he had ever done before, he says, How'd you think about all this? How'd you think of it?" I said, the kitchen? Like what I wanted to do? "Yeah, how'd you have this idea?" I said, "Well, I guess, I don't know. I just kept thinking about it and having ideas. And then I just drew them on the paper and it kind of came to life." And he nodded, but he frowned as if he was still real confused. He said, "It's amazing to think of things like this." And I looked at my kitchen for, I think, really the first time. And I realized that kitchen was an embodiment, a living expression of desires that I had been able to feel come up within me, of inklings that I had become aware of at random moments in my day, of things that I had been able to remember and connect to in the evenings. something I had seen and thought was great, something I wondered if it would work in there, an idea I had for where to put that, a desire I knew I felt for that particular color or handle. And standing there next to him, I guess I went from seeing the kitchen as a drawing and a bunch of logistical details to really the sum total of a lot of present moment presences in which I was aware of what I desired. And there he was, working a job where he had perhaps learned to tune out the scrapes, the burns, the aches, the tiredness, wondering how a woman that he works for came up with such a big change. And I wondered, how could I communicate all of that to him? How could I say, well, you can take guided meditations and you can feel what it's like to go way, 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 way up out of your body and then come back into it and know your body even better that way. Or you can ground down out of your body and you can bury your legs in warm sand or dip into a bath and know your body that way. Or you can listen to a bunch of channeled messages about time and come into the present and get to know your body that way. And really, it's a big universe, and it's not necessarily about which direction you choose to take your body in, up and down or sideways. It's just that you always come home. That you feel and acknowledge the things that you desire or think or wonder, that you move in their direction. The Course today made perhaps a staggering claim. For many out there who still believe that somehow awakening is ascending into something, strictly directionally speaking, and that our bodies might become less of what they are today. That is a true and valid perspective. And also, the Course is suggesting that the direction of expansion is through and outward by our expression in creation. In their message today, they pointed out that these things are being birthed through us. My desires were birthed into an expression of a kitchen. That involved lifting physical things, gluing physical things. I can feel it with my hands. I can run my fingers along it every morning. It is more of me in this world. The up or the down or the outward or the sideways or the any direction is an expression of what I am here. If you have a desire to go up, if you want to be in those finer wavelengths of light, that desire is felt from this embodiment in this present moment. That direction is created, is birthed by you. If you want to go down into the earth, if you want to feel the vastness and the depth of everything that you are, held in the heaviness of stone and dirt, that desire is an expression of you, perceived in the present moment. You are giving birth to the experiences, to the construct of Earth itself. Distance emanates. It is not something that exists outside of us that is defined and calculated and then crossed. Distance emanates from within each of us based on our perspective, based on our connection to the infinite energy of the universe and the things that we believe and how we birth them into our reality. There is so much in this topic that has been unconscious to us by choice. And now that we are stepping into a greater presence and a greater awareness of what we feel moment by moment, we will come to a clearer sense of the way that we wield distance in each and every manifestation, whether in bringing things together that force us apart or forcing ourselves apart in order to bring certain things together, feeling a desire to go a great distance because of what we will encounter on the way, feeling like not going anywhere at all because what you need to face is right in the room with you anyway. When you begin to feel the freedom to truly move in any direction that you wish in every present moment that you perceive, the universe becomes even more vast, more full of incredible experiences, more full of things to create, perhaps even like a kitchen that you worked on for months and then one day finally saw and knew that the road ahead of you would never again be the same. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you found these messages to be helpful. May they accelerate you on your path wherever you'd like it to go. If you have questions on any of the topics that were brought up in today's episode, check out seasons 1 and 2 of our podcasts or visit katieandthechorus.com. There you'll find information on our episodes, 2 books, and how to get in touch with us. Thanks again. See you next time.